been a week, and surprisingly enough, in 1 week, the economy almost toppled. I think it's important for us to discuss. My topic I'm going to start with is the Robinhood app getting hit with a class action lawsuit after halting the sale of GameStop stock. So this is a long story. I'm going to kind of pedal through it rather quickly, and then we'll discuss.
It wasn't just GameStop stock, but that's the big news hitter.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I got a whole slew. GameStop was the impetus, if you will, of this, where basically quite a few hedge funds have been betting against GameStop stock as well as AMC, Nokia, BlackBerry. There's about 5 of them total stocks, and people
nothing like a bunch of nostalgic stocks. Suddenly people are losing their mind or going nuts buying them up.
Yeah, that's what happened. No, actually what happened is that people on Reddit, specifically Wall Street Beats Reddit page, decided to organize and purchase said stock. It's Wall Street Beats. Don't correct me, sir. Come on, let's see it. I want you to prove the master wrong.
What?
Oh, he's going to look up the name of the Reddit.
Wall Street Bets.
It's Beats. Thank you. Basically, people got together on Reddit and decided that they were going to bet against the short. So what happens, for those who are not aware, is that when a stock is or a company is not doing well, investors can bet against the stock. So they can buy stock, borrow stock, give it to somebody else, and then bet that the money will not increase. They will then sell that stock back and make whatever the difference is. So if they borrow it at, say, $50, the stock drops to $20, they would then be able to pocket $30 and give back the stock for $20. This is how a lot of hedge funds make lots of money. That they bet on shorts all the time and come out on the end. So a group on Reddit decided that they were going to screw the hedge funds by investing in said stock. So they started purchasing stock like crazy. It increased 300% from its original value over the course of 3 or 4 days. And then Robinhood, along with Webull, there are other investment apps as well. I believe it's called Webull was the big one. Yes, Webull started preventing the sale of these stocks. Not just preventing the sale, but they prevented any sort of trading with these stocks whatsoever. So you couldn't go and buy more. You couldn't sell any.
Yeah, you could sell still.
No. So there was a complication in between all of this where originally you couldn't buy anymore, but then you could sell. Then they pulled entirely, saying that you couldn't do anything with the stock. They were canceling people's orders because people were ordering to sell or to trade in their stock or to purchase. All of them were getting canceled. There was technical issues, like crazy complicated technical issues, on top of the fact that other organizations were slowing their trades, but they weren't slowing it as fast as, say, Webull and Robinhood. So Robinhood is then hit with a class action lawsuit from a gentleman whose name escapes me. I'm going to look it up right now because, that's what you should have done beforehand. We had technical issues before the show, so I was really more focused on that. It actually doesn't say the plaintiff, but it was filed in New York. The plaintiff claims that Robinhood purposefully, willfully, and knowingly removed the stock GME from its trading platform in the midst of an unprecedented stock rise, thereby depriving retail investors of the ability to invest in the open market and manipulating the open market.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the long and short of it. But this does create an interesting situation that I would love to discuss with you guys, because there's the end of Robinhood and other platforms, again, Webull being one of them, saying that they were trying to protect their consumers. It's a very volatile market out there. They didn't want anybody to basically ruin themselves on their application. There's also the aspect of the fact that Robinhood themselves has to be able to cover 300% of whatever losses that accrue on their platform.
They have to have liquidity
for it. There you go. So there's the other aspect where it feels very much like a lot of people are being screwed because they're not wealthy investors, and they just screwed a lot of wealthy investors out of money, and they're being punished for it. So I'd like to open the floor to our discussion here.
I'll let Mark go. He's about to burst out of his pants.
I'm about to say, he looks like he's about to.
Jesus.
I have some opinions on this that I'm not like. I don't like this at all. First, so actually to add to the list, TD Ameritrade also started blocking trades for GameStop stock, and Wells Fargo's investment platform stopped making recommendations for GameStop. Not that you couldn't trade it, but they stopped making recommendations for GameStop through their automated system like they normally would have, because massive incline of a stock should mean that an automated system would make recommendations. Wells Fargo then removed that recommendation.
I'm sorry, I wanted to add to the history lesson here. As of today, the stock has fallen 40 or 60% and is actually no longer allowed to be traded whatsoever on the market. All markets pulled the ability to trade it.
Okay.
At least at the time in which I read, it might be different now, or it might have been different by the time the markets closed, but they basically prevented anybody from being able to do anything with it because the price was falling.
My problem is I don't understand how you can do that, because if it's a publicly traded company, when the markets are open to the time they are closed, they should be able to be traded. You're manipulating things by not allowing them to be traded.
So Mark's correct in the sense that it's the platform, and the platform holders, again, like have to have a certain level of liquidity. So they're protecting their own asses from being sued.
Yeah, I get that. But I mean, there's no way that they don't have enough money to cover that in the major ones. Now, Robinhood, okay, maybe.
But Wells Fargo,
Like if it's the liquidity as a problem, though, then the issue isn't necessarily trading specific stocks. It should be trading on the platform, period.
Yeah.
Like it's way too targeted. That's actually market manipulation if that's the case. If you just don't let people trade, period, because you as a company don't have enough liquidity to cover your own ass, well,
it is what it is.
That's different. You know, like you're not necessarily blocking me from making specific trades. You're blocking me from making any trade. Well, I can go to another platform then if I want to and trade there. But if you're saying that I could still hold on my Wells Fargo stock here, but I can't, or my whatever, Google stock here, but I can't, like I can't buy GameStop stock now. Why?
Yeah.
So that by definition that the SEC puts in place, yes, this is market manipulation. Like first off, what the Redditors did was market manipulation.
No, they played the same game that everybody plays, whether you're playing
pumping and dumping
shorts or not.
Purchasing stock in mass with a large amount with the intent of selling that stock after the fact, or the intent of driving the price specifically, is illegal. It's considered market manipulation.
It's no different than buying the stock in order to short it later. I mean, it's all about the bet.
So to clarify, shorts are different. Shorts are bets against the stock. They have absolutely nothing to do with the market, which is why they have completely different sets of regulations.
Yeah, one's actually purchasing the stock. You're borrowing the stock.
Right. Shorts don't actually affect shorts don't actually affect the price of the stock unless you talk about the shorts. That's different.
Correct. Yeah.
Which was part of it, was that the hedge fund had specifically gone to Wall Street Bets and had started to talk about the fact that they had bought 16 however many millions of dollars worth of shorts anyway against GameStop, which is where the Redditors, of course, jumped on board and said, no, we don't like that because, nostalgia and all that stuff. Let's clarify.
Well, the thing is,
a short on GameStop is not bad.
Betting against the housing market, and it's just not, a lot of people look at shorts as it's not ethical because it's taking money away from small businesses too.
You're betting to think that something's bad, like bad stuff happens.
Betting on failure, yeah. I think there's definitely the moral aspect behind it too, and to me, it just doesn't make any sense as to why you would allow that kind of borrowing, right? Like we do allow borrowing of money in this country. That's how I have this house. It's through a mortgage. It's how we pay for our cars for the most part. But all of that is also based on a level of understanding that, one, I can repay that money, and two, there's like an agreement basically that I'm going to pay a specific percentage because I'm borrowing that money from you. Like there's an easy to kind of feel out contract, even if it feels more complicated than it actually is. Shorting to me feels like magic in the sense that it is literally, or I'm sorry, not magic. That makes it sound glamorous. Like it feels like funny money. Like it feels like Monopoly money. Cause it's like, hey, I'm going to borrow this, which I don't own, and give it to somebody else who's going to buy it and then hopefully make money off of it. Like you're adding a middleman in there just to add another way to make tons of money off of other people's failure. That just sounds awful.
Yeah. I mean, it's no different than in the 2008 market bubble where people were betting against the banks because they were giving crap loans and knew they were giving crap loans. So they benefited from the banks doing a shitty practice against other people who were going to lose their homes. So
right.
I mean, you can talk about whether it's ethically or morally right. Why should you be able to do that?
Then what happened? We ended up bailing the banks out, and all these hedge funds made a bunch of money.
Yep. And they're sitting there laughing at us from their ivory tower on Wall Street. You know, the smartest thing I ever heard said was by a person whose name I can't remember right now about this situation.
We'll call him Gandalf.
No, we're not going to call him Gandalf because he's super short. He was the Department of Labor for Clinton.
He's Frodo.
Not Frodo, damn it. Well, I mean,
we
he might be
can
as
call
tall as
him
Frodo.
Frodo.
Anyway, he said...
Frodo said
that Wall Street is not indicative of a good economy. It's not about when Wall Street does well, the economy is doing well. When Wall Street's doing well, the rich are doing well. The rich are Wall Street. And so when I hear about them bitching about their money's being taken away because they were trying to manipulate things in their benefit, and then someone else saw their opportunity that they were going to try to short it and then fooled them by buying stocks, I don't see anything wrong with that, in my opinion.
I wanted you to finish your thought process, Mark, because I know we keep hopping in. This is a hot topic that we all have.
Hopping in right now?
I think that idea that they bought stocks specifically to drive the price up to spite somebody else, like, first off, by legal definition of what the SEC puts in place, because they're a regulatory body, says that is market manipulation. Because to be fair, market manipulation is kind of a wide definition in their book. Buying $146 million worth of stock just to drive the price up and then sell it afterwards, commonly called a pump and dump, is illegal. Like that's literally illegal, because the idea is you drive the price up because you're the leader that drives that price up to double or triple whatever it was initially, and then you sell it. The SEC will say, no, we're going to reverse every single trade before that specific trade happened, and everybody's going to get their money back, and then we're just going to continue like that never happened, and then you're going to get a massive amount of fines and a lawsuit on top of it. Like that's how they work there. But
it is true. But I find this really interesting because I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
I was gonna say I find this really interesting only because they haven't done that, right? Like, arguably, there's a means to track this. Like, we know who was involved in a majority, especially the original push, right? So the fact that they are holding fast, I think, makes that a super interesting point right now, because you are correct by definition. This is market manipulation. But John, you're also correct. This is what happens on a regular basis when you're talking about hedge funds and Wall Street in general, right? Like, there's all kinds of different, there are rumors that float around about companies being acquired in order to inflate or deflate their value. Like, this happens on a regular basis. Yeah. And granted, I would argue none of us are really investors. I pay someone to invest for me because I don't pay attention enough to the market. So I can't really speak to it, but I can't think of the last time we had major lawsuits involving insider trading or anything else like this. Like, you had Enron, you had the market bubble, and I think honestly the last one, and it's not even involving stocks, but it is the biggest like white collar thing I can think of is Wells Fargo and the Fire Fest, right? Fire Festival.
Oh yeah.
Like,
but that was straight up lying.
Agreed.
Like that was fraud.
That was, again, not stocks,
deception.
But like my point is, when you talk about these kinds of crimes and how they're litigated, I honestly think that by definition, being loose, it's loosely used in a way that it actually doesn't really hurt the people who do the crime. Right? It usually benefits them. Because
we literally bailed out entire companies because our economy was tied to them so deeply. I mean, how is that not stock? That's market manipulation to keep our economy from crashing. There's no difference between calling that or a pump and dump, because eventually we're going to get that money back, supposedly.
What do you mean getting the money back?
Well, and we're having to give AIG and all these other people money in order to keep them from failing, in order to keep our economy from crashing.
Bailouts,
Yeah. Well, I mean, because that's how the banks make most of their money, is taking the money that you store with them and they turn it into investments, and that's how they make money on the side too. But, so if you want to talk about SEC lawsuits anyway, and why I'm kind of intrigued why the SEC hasn't jumped in to say that these specific Redditors are involved should be prosecuted for market manipulation, as well as Robinhood should also be, in my opinion, charged for market manipulation. The one I love to reference back to is Elon Musk's fine by the SEC for putting out a tweet that said funding secured.
Remember that?
Like 4 hours before the official contract was signed. They fined Tesla $20 million. They fined Elon Musk individually $20 million. And then they've told Tesla that they could not be publicly traded if Elon Musk sat as the CEO of the company anymore. He had to sit on the board. What? Oh, sure, you'll jump on that in the span of a week, but like you want to talk about market manipulation and the fact that nothing's going wrong here technically either. So which one is it? You know, like I think the Redditors should be charged for the market manipulation. I think Robinhood should be charged with market manipulation against the people. Like, which one is it? You know, like
I think that's why they're so hesitant on doing anything is because it's like, do we just literally find and arrest all these people? I mean, how could they even? I mean, you were talking about finding Tesla and them $20 million. Those Redditors, there's no way they could pay at anything close to that.
Well, so usually it's supposed to be related to the damages that are caused by whatever thing you do.
But the problem is, if like how do you choose which specific Redditors to do?
Because there were like 2 or 3 specific Redditors that had started the conversation that actually led the charge. Like and they're like their usernames are no, we can find them real quick if we look. But
no, it's cool. I mean, I just don't know if those usernames are tied to real names, and you could subpoena Reddit for the IP addresses. Mm-hmm. You could go to the ISPs and figure out what home it is and figure out who in the home anyway did it. So that's all possible.
Well, I know why they're not. It's because they would have a riot on their hands right now.
I mean, you're going to literally look like a giant bully beating the crap out of a little guy.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, I think that I would be surprised if they do anything, because I think their idea is let it all settle. You know, Robinhood and these other investment apps can take the heat, and we're just going to move on, and we'll figure out new laws to figure out, or we'll find new regulations to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Right, but the whole point of the whole point of a regulating body is to impose fines on things that are illegal, not to just let the dust settle so the focus stays off of them.
I agree with that sentiment. I mean, if they did something that was wrong, they should be held accountable for it.
Okay, so here's the way that I see this. If Wells Fargo just suddenly decided, well, we're just going to take $1,000 from every person, and the SEC should jump in and take or from your money market accounts, and the SEC is supposed to be the one to say no, you can't do that.
Well, I think
the SEC says, well, we're just going to let this blow over, let Wells Fargo take all the heat for this, and then we'll set a regulation after the fact that says you can't take money from your investors. Like, come on, you're going to tell me that nobody's going to be up in arms about that? Like,
the thing is it actually illegal to get a bunch of people? The problem is again, I don't think they had I don't know. I'm not going to speak for their intent, but I think the intent was to stop the short. It wasn't to pump up the stock so they could sell it later.
But that's how you beat a short, is you increase the stock price.
Yeah,
that's
you can increase the stock price all you want to. All they did was invest into a company at this point in time. If you prove that you would have to prove that they planned on getting it high enough that the people who were shorting couldn't sell the stock, and that's all that they were trying to do. There's nothing wrong with that. They just bet wrong and other people invested.
The intent wasn't just to stop the short. The intent was to damage the hedge funds that had shorted GameStop.
The damage comes because they have, with the borrowed stock, they have to pay it back at some point in time.
Correct. Yes.
So again, it's not illegal to buy stock together as a group of any kind.
It is if your intent is to actually manipulate the market.
That if you not posted on Reddit saying that this is the intent,
is manipulating the market. If they did it with an intent to boost the stock and want to support
on Reddit, they literally gathered together as one to do this one instance thing.
But with the intent to raise the price to shut down the hedge funds. That was the specific intent with a Reddit post like that.
But what you were saying was that they would have to do it in order to sell later over at an exorbitant price. But they didn't. They were holding the stock.
I was using that as an example of market manipulation. That like a pump and dump from a singular organization anyway of a lot of money to raise the price and then immediately sell it. That is the point. But the initial intent of raising the stock price is the market manipulation, not necessarily the sale on the other side. It's not the full thing. It's the intent initially to raise the stock price for personal benefit. So then
what's the point investing into stocks if the whole point is adding money to a stock to increase its worth?
Because you're not tossing hundreds of millions of dollars into a single stock with the intent of raising that stock price. You're investing in a stock because you think that company is going to do well. Or you're thinking that, a new product that, like, you buy Apple stock around August every year because the idea is that by September or October, they're going to have a nice product released. They themselves naturally are going to increase the stock price because they've released a decent product or had a product release. And then you can sell your stock after that release happens. Like that's the intent there. Like you're not buying Apple stock thinking that millions of people are also going to be buying it with you, or you're not posting on Reddit saying, hey, let's all buy Apple stock because, we want to raise the stock price artificially, not because the company's doing well, but because, we think that we want to stick it to these guys because, from a financial perspective, like
as far as I know, a click doesn't have to have a motive.
The intent
if you're buying the stock.
But if you post on the internet and say that this is your motive.
Yeah, that's the issue.
I know.
Is that they were all on Reddit and they went and said, we want to do this in order to fuck the hedge funds.
And this is why. Like
it'd be one thing, because I understand what you're trying to say. Because I mean, in this instance, if I had $10 million and I went to GameStop just because I like GameStop, I have nostalgia for it, and spent $10 million worth of stock on them, it's a bad investment. But that is also market manipulation. They just got an influx of $10 million into their worth. Like, that's a lot of fucking money.
And the hedge fund guys would be just as pissed off about it.
Agreed.
If they were trying to short the stock.
But again, the difference would be is that the hedge fund guys could come after me legally, call the SEC, say, hey, this is what he's doing. And they would investigate and come to the conclusion that, oh, no, he just really likes GameStop.
Yeah, if they decided to come back and find out that, like, so the big thing, if it, like you were talking, like I was mentioning the pump dump, is if you sell your stock, that does show intent to raise the price for market manipulation. Like that just proves it. But the initial stock manipulation is the issue. Like Brent's talking about, if you decide, like, actually, who is it? The guy that had $50,000, his life savings already in GameStop, whenever he put $50,000 in at the beginning, whenever it like was only worth like a fifth or a third of what it is now. When that stock price came up and he sold out like half of his shares at like 16 million. Like that, like he's not part of the market manipulation here because he didn't buy stock as part of this artificial increase. It was purely with the intent that he had already bought the shares with his retirement savings a while ago and turned it into something massive.
Now, I also feel like it's very important. I'm in no way protecting anybody here. I'm just going based off of the regulations as far as I understand them. I think these people are awesome. Like, I agree entirely. F the hedge fund people. I'm sorry. Like, again, you fucked our economy over and over again. I do understand that the stock market isn't strictly based off of feeling, but it has a lot of impact on feeling. Like how people feel the value is on things is a huge factor, especially when we're talking about the minute transactions from minute to minute compared to like week to week. Right. You know, overall, I think
the millisecond transactions that stock trades go at are insane. I mean, they're making pennies off of every single trade, but when they're making 1 million trades a day, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like,
well, there's a reason why Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Vanguard, like all these corporations hire developers to make the best software that they can for this because they want to be as up to date as possible.
Well, the other thing too is that's why like some of the higher profile like money market like or trade accounts or trade companies that you work with have a minimum capital requirement too. So like Robinhood, for example, works with a zero trade fee. Like that's why like for working class people that makes sense anyway from a stock market perspective if you want to fool around in the stock market. But like large companies like large money market accounts have minimum capital requirements for you to jump in because trades you're going to do are bigger, which means they can pull big fees off of that to on the other side of it. So like, you're not going to see, you know, like average Joe walk in with $2,000 and suddenly start playing around with, you know, like a high class investing account. Like that's just not going to happen.
I find all this incredibly fascinating, of course, right? You know, one, I'm kind of pissed I didn't jump on the bandwagon. I saw the news coming out and people were like trying to pump the stock and I was like, whatever. And then all of a sudden 300%, that's an increase. I'm sure every one of us is like, man, wish I'd gotten in on it a little.
Yeah, no, at the same time I looked at that and I was like, there's just something wrong and I don't want any part of it actually. Like it's interesting and I'm watching it, but I'm like, this is one case where I'm glad I'm the observer.
In the long run, it may be the case. I also agree on the legal standpoint. Is I'm super curious what happens here because Mark, you do bring up a valid point, right? Like, hey, the whole point of a governing body here is this. But I also think if you look at the situation we are in the United States here, like on the 6th, we had an insurrection. We've talked about it before. They tried to overthrow the government. We've had groups of individuals over the past year, whether it be for, the killing of unarmed black individuals, whether it be for police brutality, whether it be for the insurrection of the Capitol. Like there's been multiple protests that have led to lots of uprisings. In some cities, they actually could not get control of these things. Like I think currently right now, the government's like, you know what? We'll just do this one as a pass. Like we just need to figure out what happened first. We're not going to make any moves until then.
The hedge fund was only betting like $100 million. It really isn't that big a deal in a grand scheme of things. Come on.
That's the other big thing too. I think it's super important is that Robinhood is backed by 3 separate hedge funds. And that was another factor that led to a lot of the personal feeling. Correct. Of this entire situation.
That's what I think. To me, that's what made it feel so gross is that with them manipulating everything, saying no, it's one thing if the Redditors were doing what they were doing. It's like, fine, the SEC is going to get involved and you're going to have to deal with some stuff. But the fact that they did what they did, now it's like, all right, correct. 2 wrongs make a right now.
Well, also to me, it's like if you truly are so concerned about that cash flow and what happened, then it makes me wonder how you got that cash flow. Because if the SEC came in and was like, oh no, all this is wrong, we're just going to, like you said, roll everything back after this transaction for everyone, that's a clean reset and you keep your money. So how did your money get that far? That's kind of interesting. So that's where my head kind of goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, not to mention, like he was talking about the guy that pulled out 16 million. He did it legitly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you punish him?
You roll the price back. You unfortunately roll his money back into it, and all today. Like that. Unfortunately, that's kind of that's how that would go to some extent. They're a regulatory body. You're playing in the market. Like that's.
I hope the guy pulled that cash out and ran like a motherfucker.
I don't have it anymore. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know what they would do in that.
Hookers and cocaine.
Invested in gold.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
Nazi gold.
And bury it in the backyard so nobody can find it.
No, he went to Buenos Aires where there's Nazi gold. So
is that an Indiana joke?
No, it's just the fact that the Nazis ran away to South America and they allowed it. That's the thing.
The conspiracy one.
Not a conspiracy. There's actually been.
There are some of them that did. Yeah, that's true. I was thinking Hitler specifically.
Yeah, not Hitler. No, or maybe. Do we have any final thoughts on here other than I also wanted to note that there are already not 1 but 2 movie deals about this entire event, one at Netflix amazing. And one at Sony, I think right now.
I am really going to be interested in seeing how this all plays out. I don't, this is actually one of the first times I've heard, outside of, angry rich people saying this isn't fair and crying. It just made me like go, fuck you. I don't give a shit.
I agree with that entirely.
This is the first time where Mark came and said, what they did was wrong. And I'm like, see, I haven't heard that. I've heard that, oh, this isn't fair, but I haven't heard this is what they did wrong. And I'm like,
if you go to Reddit, everybody likes to complain about the hedge fund and the fact that they put a short out there. Fun fact, the short does not affect the stock price unless you talk about it. They did talk about it, but then immediately there was the giant, resurgence against it. But the other thing too is, who really
so
thought
it was a retaliation. So technically, then the hedge fund started it.
Sort of, but they didn't manipulate the market.
Well, they did by talking about it.
Yes and no. Yes, I can see that
about
argument.
The short manipulated it in their favor. You don't get to draw the line. You just said you can't choose sides, motherfucker.
But it depends on how much money goes into it.
How can so you put a dollar price on this? Is that a part of the rules? You just said it was vague.
No. Okay, fine. The SEC, yes, could talk about them and say, yes, okay, fine. We took a short out about this. So I guess the question is then, is it illegal for you to talk about in your investments and saying, I bought $5,000 in this stock, so everybody else, goes out and buys it, and then you're responsible. You're on the hook for market manipulation because you said that you bought $5,000 in shares.
Is it? Because if Elon Musk goes, oh, I'm buying a bunch of stock in nickel, obviously every one of his freaking cronies, and probably including you and Dylan's going to go buy a bunch of ton of nickel.
But then you're putting a dollar value on it because that person's worth a lot more, has a lot more in clout than you do.
Yeah, but how do you measure this? How much clout does it take for someone to be able to get in trouble for saying things?
I would argue tens or hundreds of thousands of Reddit users posting about this and then it showing up in the news is a lot more important than a singular hedge fund posting about it on a single Reddit page.
No, because technically the hedge fund has just as much money as the thousands of Reddit users.
Not only that, the hedge fund is literally what led to this,
not
right?
even.
Like if they spoke about it, if they're the ones who talked
They
about
taunted
having
them.
the short against it, that's literally influencing the market because everyone's going, all right, well, we want to fuck them.
They'll get hit.
Hold on, motherfucker. Yeah. What if their intention was to piss off the Reddit users to say, oh, we're going to stop this. But what they really did was buy stock. And then all the Reddit users went in and bought a bunch of stock and then they sold out.
And then filed for Chapter 11. like which one is it? Because like they had to file, like two of them had to file for bankruptcy. That's what happened.
Well, no, I'm talking about in this scenario, if they decided to tell the Reddit to like goat them into thinking they were shorting it, but in reality they were lying and they bought stock in GameStop and then Reddit users went and plowed the GameStop stock all the way to the roof and then they sold out, they would have benefited in there. They would have been happy as shit.
They would have if they hadn't filed for bankruptcy because those short positions actually cost them enough to shut them out of business. Like literally, that's what happened.
This is the short position not existing scenario.
Short position, not existing scenario. Okay, fine. Then yes, that's market manipulation, 100%, because then you're lying about what your investment is. But that's also
manipulated the market either way. This one just turned out to be a negative consequence.
I suppose. But which one do you think is more impactful? One hedge fund or two hedge one hedge fund posting
impact. It's the literal definition of what was
because
wrong.
the fine that comes out on the other side of it is proportional to the amount of loss that happens.
In the leg, so it's not that bad.
So I will argue here.
I would say assault. I would say assault with a deadly weapon is actually a lot better than murder.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say, Mark.
So there's still wrong though. Like there's still a
I'm not debating that. I'm not debating that.
There's a degree of wrongness.
Yeah. Hey, all right, reel it in. To answer your question,
you
Mark,
reel it in, motherfucker.
The hedge fund still has the highest impact here only because they literally started. They were the impetus of this. By discussing this, they led to the actual situation where people decided to short.
But I'll argue that the repercussions of this should be proportional.
I agree with that entirely. I think it should be proportional to everyone involved. And that includes the people who led the charge on Reddit. You know, not that I don't agree with their sentiment. I completely emotionally understand that. But there are still laws around this kind of thing.
Actually, I put this more on the hedge fund people for starting the shit, though. I mean, if you're going to sit there and taunt people and then they react to what you're taunting them about, which is wrong to begin with and illegal, it started with them.
Which is why
it depends on whether or not it's an actual taunt.
So it's like someone punching you, then you punch back, and they're like, "Oh, you're both going to jail."
Mark, now we're backpedaling here because you said if a hedge fund were to discuss the short in a specific situation that led to an influx in the market, that was wrong. So the hedge fund spoke about their in short in a way that impacted the market. Like hedge fund had the.
Did it impact the market?
Did it? We're literally fucking talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, no. Did them talking about a short drop the price? Because that would be their impact. If it increased the price, that's a complete opposite.
It did affect the market when they went and bought stock.
Affecting the short though, because the fact they increased the price, the short just went in the positive or the negative.
I'm talking about the
impact in general.
I'm talking about the hedge fund buying the short position and talking about it. If that caused a dip in the price, because that would be the causal effect that would benefit them.
Yes.
Then that would be the market manipulation.
Because it doesn't benefit them doesn't mean that they're not manipulating the market.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's still an intent.
You can talk about things and they could be negative for you, but they're still impacting the market. And in this instance, it impacted the market. We're literally talking about it for 35 minutes in our show this week.
But does that put them on the hook, I guess, for everything that the rest of the... Well, I guess then the conversation evolves to, does that put them on the hook for what the Redditors did to spite them?
I think that there's, again,
or the Redditors responsible for that.
I think there's proportional blame here, right? I do think that the hedge fund should get some of the blame for this because, again, you're not supposed to talk about your shorts. That's the whole point, is that you don't touch the market even when you're shorting a company, right?
So my point is again, if someone hits you and you hit them back, Are you going to be put up? Are you supposed to be held put up for assault or battery? No,
I mean,
you were defending yourself essentially.
No, because we have laws in our country for all kinds of things, right? We have castle law, which people get in trouble with all the time because someone's on their front lawn, they shoot at them within the house, they fire back, they have to go to court, they get charged with some sort of assault with a deadly weapon. Like we do have laws. They're not all fair and they're not the way they should be. I totally understand that. But in this circumstance, if we're going by the laws and the regulations that are set aside, the Redditors do carry some of the blame here. I won't say as much of the blame as the hedge fund, because again, that's the tipping point. That is literally the influx of the change of the market came from the hedge fund people saying, guess what? We put a short out on GameStop.
There's no reason they would have done it. The reason they did it was to get a response. You don't do shit like that unless you're trying to get a response. Whether it was at them personally or they were actually trying to influence the market, you would have to prove otherwise.
Regardless, they did influence the market, so therefore they should be punished. And I do believe the people that helped push that. Now, I'm not talking about every single Redditor on there. I'm not talking about every investor on there. But I am talking about the 3 people that are really well documented who said, yeah, let's all band together and do this.
I don't even think they understood what they were doing was wrong, if that's the case. I think they just got together and said, you know what, fuck you.
Just because you don't know the law exists.
I said intent. I don't know their intent. I'm just specifically, to me, if I'm reading a post and they're like, hey, we're going to screw them, I'd be like, all right, fuck you, motherfucker. Hey, Brent, you want to go just totally fuck this dude's life up? Let's do it. And you would be like, yes, John, let's go fuck his life up.
That's exactly. Yeah, no, I mean,
because we're bros to the end, man.
There's still laws, there's still regulations. Yep. And just because you don't know you broke it doesn't mean that you didn't break it. So.
Revenge ain't clean, man.
You're right, and there are consequences to actions. So I do find.
I just feel like this is a hero story that I want to celebrate, and now you guys are taking it away from me, and I don't like it.
Well, I think much
because
like
the Redditors prevailed against the rich people. Like,
no, well, I
Reddit
think like
does some
most
crazy
stories
this
that
world,
we know,
and this
right?
just proves to you how powerful them are.
Like, okay, so you know that other people pulled up short positions whenever the stock price increased, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like, as soon as the stock price spiked, bunch of other short positions opened up because, by the way, it's artificial inflation. As long as the SEC doesn't roll back, as soon as the price deflates, which it already has, by the way, and it will continue to deflate because, by the way, GameStop has no actual value anymore like they used to.
Correct.
Like, okay, who here is going to argue that GameStop had any position of really maintaining a decent business model?
Listen, we have spoken 3 times on this podcast about them disappearing into the comment section is going to blow up with
people coming out and telling us how.
Neither of you listen to me. One of the founders of Chewy has joined a board to help them become more of an e-commerce company. Okay, they're going to live.
Really, they should have done that like 10 years ago.
Again, maybe, but I never looked at a person being that influential. Like if Jeff Bezos decided to join, I'll be like, oh wow, okay, things are about to change.
Okay,
I don't know what the hell's about to happen,
but so then should we sue Jeff Bezos for joining the company and artificially inflating the stock price?
No, because that's different. Because of the fact that he is literally joining the company. We don't even go down this road.
It's no different than having Jeff Bezos say, "Hey, I really like GameStop. I love GameStop." And he was paid as a sponsor. As long as it's credited as such.
Under FTC rules, if he's paid as a sponsor, he has to disclose that he's paid as a sponsor.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As long as you follow the rules as a paid sponsor, you're good to go.
I think we can all agree that all of this is witchcraft and that we should stop doing it because it's obvious
let's talk about the FTC.
Please let us know what your thoughts are on this entire GameStonks situation. You can let us know in the comments.
I hate that, by the way. I forget that it's the dumbest thing I've seen anybody say. And of course, it comes out of Elon Musk's Twitter. I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean?
It's a meme.
Stonks.
Stonks is a meme. I'll show you later. It's right here. It's the comment section right here. But now I think it's time to move on.